This Sunday on Press Pass, ABC has pulled the plug on Jimmy Kimmel Live. The late-night show is now off the air indefinitely after Kimmel's remarks about conservative activist Charlie Kirk's alleged killer. The network's decision came Wednesday following reaction from FCC Chairman Brendan Carr. Carr warned that the agency could take action against Disney and ABC, even suggesting affiliate licenses could be revoked if the network failed to respond. It's the latest example of fallout nationwide where people have lost jobs or faced suspensions over social media posts tied to Kirk's death. So here to weigh in on these actions, attorney and assistant general counsel at International Chemical Workers Union, Jeff Geisinger. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's unpack this a little bit. Do you remember a time or an event where we've seen such quick consequences after someone posted or said something on social media or on air?
You know, I think social media, since it was invented, has been an issue for employers, and I think that we have seen people terminated in the past for social media posts. I think today's political climate has really made that more pronounced and more commonplace. I can't remember a time that's been quite as divisive as it is right now.
Now, since his death, people have been using past quotes of Charlie Kirk. For example, the Cleveland fire chief, he was just placed on paid leave after he reposted a political cartoon of Charlie Kirk and Republicans. What kind of legal cases or lawsuits do you see coming in the future regarding someone's employment and their firing or being put on leave?
So the fire chief is a government employee, which is an important thing to remember because the First Amendment really only protects you against state action. That means the government doing something to you, either taking your property or depriving you of your liberty. So when you're a government employee, it's the government taking your job. And so you do have some First Amendment protection. Now, it's not absolute protection. The law looks at a government employer in much the same way that it looks at a regular employer, and it understands that the government employer has an interest in running an efficient operation. So you have a little bit of First Amendment protection when you're speaking on a matter of public concern, which this probably is, but you don't have any First Amendment protection if you're a government employee and you're talking on a matter of private concern. So if you take up an issue with like your boss, that's a matter of private concern. You're not talking about a topic that the public would be concerned about.
Now, say it's not, the person does not work for the government. What rights do employees have when it comes to sharing their opinion on, I guess, or posting their opinion on social media without any affiliation with their job?
Yeah, so I think this is really surprising for people that you don't have any First Amendment protection because you're not employed by the government. It's not the government taking your job away. It's a private employer. And so you don't have any rights, really. Here in Ohio, it's an at-will employment state, which means you can be fired for any reason or no reason at all, so long as it's not an impermissible reason. And those impermissible reasons, those are things like race, religion, that type of thing. But if your employer doesn't agree with your political opinions, they can fire you.
So free speech, that argument does not come into play here at all?
Not in the private sector. If you're in the private sector, the best protection that you can have is an employment contract. Once you have an employment contract, it typically contains something like just cause protection, so you can't be terminated except for just cause. Individual employment contracts are usually reserved for high-profile people. More common for ordinary people is that they'll have a collective bargaining agreement with their labor union, and that will typically impose a just cause requirement on the employer.
Now, on the flip side, what right does the employer have in cases like this?
So the employer has the right to terminate you, again, for any reason or no reason at all. If there is an employment contract, then the employer has to establish that there's just cause for the termination. So they'll look at how have situations like this been handled in the past? Have we fired people for similar things? Did we tell the employee that this type of conduct was prohibited? But absent an employment contract, absent a collective bargaining agreement, again, the employer can really fire you for any reason or no reason at all.
What about the situation with Jimmy Kimmel? Now, there are a lot of people who work there. Does this play a role at all? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
So Jimmy Kimmel has an employment contract, right? So that's probably why he's been placed on suspension and he hasn't been fired and he's probably still drawing a paycheck. Another thing to consider here is the FCC's involvement and the FCC putting its thumb on the scale and curtailing the network's ability to broadcast political opinions without censorship. So there are more elements at play in that situation, especially given, again, that he's somebody who has a contract.
What should people think about when they're in the heat of the moment and kind of want to immediately post something or their opinion about situations like this?
Sure, yeah. I would go and speak with employees and do employee training on this topic, and the thing I would always tell them is, imagine that you're in a room full of your coworkers and your boss is standing right there next to them. Don't say anything that would make you feel uncomfortable in that situation. That means staying away from controversial topics like politics. I understand that you might feel that that's part of your identity and that you have to speak on those matters, but just understand that if you do that, you're potentially placing your job in jeopardy.
All right, good advice there. Thank you, Jeff.